Before we dive into this emotional unraveling of three of the most beloved names in the C-drama world, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on all notifications. What you're about to discover will change the way you see Dylan Wang, Shen Yue, and Bai Lu forever. Their stories may seem separate, but behind the lights, fame, and applause lies a pattern so striking it almost feels destined. It began with coincidence. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. Three young actors, each carving their way through the industry, unaware that their paths were aligning in the most unexpected ways. Dylan Wang, the charismatic heartthrob who carried a storm behind his calm smile. Shen Yue, the girl next door with an emotional depth that could silence an entire room. And Bai Lu, elegant, fearless, and yet holding a quiet fragility she never allowed the public to see. Their fans adored them individually, but no one realized how their fates were quietly intertwined. It all started years ago on a small production set. Shen Yue had just wrapped a long day of filming when she crossed paths with Dylan for the very first time. It wasn't a planned meeting, but the air around them seemed to pause. Words weren't exchanged immediately, but a spark, one of recognition, of something deeply familiar, was unmistakable. That was the beginning of what would soon become an emotional thread woven through their careers. Months later, Bai Lu entered the frame. She was rising fast, her confidence lighting up every project she touched. But behind the charm, Bai Lu carried a deep loneliness. The fame was immense, but the silence afterward was louder. She often spoke in interviews about chasing meaning, about wanting to understand why certain moments felt too real, too painful, as if her roles mirrored her personal life. It wasn't long before Dylan and Bai Lu were paired in a drama that blurred the line between fiction and reality. On screen, their chemistry was undeniable. Behind the scenes, something deeper began to stir. Shen Yue, who had quietly supported Dylan through the pressures of fame, began to notice the shift. It wasn't jealousy that consumed her, it was fear. Fear that Dylan was losing himself to the persona the industry had crafted for him. She saw it in his eyes during interviews, in the way his laughter began to sound rehearsed. She had known him when the cameras were off, when the world didn't demand perfection. One night, after a long shoot, Dylan and Shen Yue sat together in silence. No makeup, no lights, just two friends caught between the real and the unreal. Shen Yue whispered, "Sometimes I feel like we're all characters in someone else's story." Dylan didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her, then said softly, "Maybe we are." That conversation, though short, stayed with them both for years. Meanwhile, Bai Lu's journey took an emotional turn of its own. She began questioning the authenticity of her fame, wondering if she was loved for who she was or for who people imagined her to be. The emotional weight of her roles started to echo through her real life. She once confided in a close friend, saying, "I think I feel too much, even when I'm acting. Sometimes it doesn't stop when they yell cut." The unseen parallels between the three deepened as their careers soared. Each was fighting a silent battle, Dylan against the expectations that crushed his freedom, Shen Yue against the emotional exhaustion that came with empathy, and Bai Lu against the haunting idea that vulnerability could destroy her. But destiny wasn't done with them yet. In a shocking twist, all three found themselves working on projects that explored themes of loss, forgiveness, and rediscovery, as if fate itself had written them into the same emotional script. Their scenes, though filmed separately, carried the same unspoken energy. The audience could feel it. The industry whispered about it. And their fans began to notice uncanny similarities between the emotions in their performances and the rumors of their personal struggles. One evening, Bai Lu attended a private event in Beijing. Dylan was there too, quietly standing by the balcony, staring at the city lights. The moment she saw him, the memories of their on-screen moments came flooding back. He turned, smiled faintly, and said, "We keep meeting in stories that never end." She laughed softly, hiding a tear. Shen Yue arrived minutes later, and for a brief moment, the three stood together again, the reflection of years of connection, distance, and destiny. It was in that quiet gathering that everything came full circle. They weren't rivals. They weren't just co-stars. They were mirrors, each carrying a piece of what the other had lost along the way. And as they stood beneath the soft glow of city lights, it became clear that their parallel journeys were never meant to compete but to complete a story bigger than any script could capture. Before you go, remember, these stars remind us that behind every performance is a person, behind every success is a struggle, and behind every parallel lies a purpose. If you felt the emotion in this story, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. The journey of Dylan, Shen Yue, and Bai Lu isn't just about fame. It's about finding light, even when the cameras stop rolling. The lights of Shanghai shimmered like scattered memories that refused to fade. As the city slept beneath a fog of flashing signs and restless dreams, three names echoed through every studio corridor: Dylan, Shen Yue, and Bai Lu. The world saw them as actors, as stars built from light and fame, but tonight, the truth would show that light always casts a shadow. It began quietly, almost innocently, when Dylan returned from a silent retreat in Chengdu. He had vanished for weeks, telling no one where he went, not even his manager. When he reappeared, his eyes carried something different, something heavier, like he had seen what others were too afraid to face. He called Shen Yue first, then Bai Lu, and what he told them would change everything. There were stories in the industry whispered about a script that was never meant to exist, a story written years before any of them became stars, a story that mirrored their lives too perfectly to be coincidence. Dylan said he found it hidden inside a locked drawer of an abandoned production office, sealed with the initials of a director who disappeared without explanation. The script's title was simple: The Parallels. When Shen Yue opened the first page, her hands trembled. Every scene reflected moments from her own life, the struggles she never shared publicly, the choices she made in silence. The words were like a mirror, pulling out her truth from the deepest corners of her soul. Bai Lu was next to read it, and her tears came quietly. She found her own heartbreak written word for word, moments only her closest circle could have known. Dylan said it felt like someone had been watching them long before they ever became famous. Someone knew their future before they did. The three met that night on a rooftop, where the sound of traffic below faded into a soft hum. Dylan placed the script on the table between them. Shen Yue looked at him and whispered, "Who wrote this?" But Dylan didn't answer. He stared into the distance, his expression torn between fear and realization. He said he believed their rise to fame wasn't random, that they were chosen for something they never agreed to. Bai Lu didn't believe it at first. But when she saw the hidden notes written in the margins, all signed with the same single initial, L, she froze. That initial belonged to a producer who vanished years ago, right after their first drama together, the one that made them household names. Rumors said he had known secrets about the industry, secrets no one wanted to hear. As they read deeper into the script, they found scenes describing future events that hadn't happened yet. Dialogue they had never spoken, but somehow felt they soon would. It was as if their entire careers were following an invisible blueprint. Then Shen Yue remembered something. During one of her earliest interviews, a journalist had asked her if she believed in destiny. She had smiled and said, "Sometimes I feel like my life was written long before I arrived." Now, those words haunted her. Days passed, and the three began seeing strange patterns everywhere. The projects they were offered, the directors who approached them, even the locations of their shoots, all seemed to trace back to that same network of names linked to the vanished producer. Every time they tried to ask questions, the answers led them into darker corridors. Shen Yue received a message one night from an unknown number. It simply said, "You're getting too close." She deleted it, but the unease stayed with her. Dylan's management suddenly cancelled his next project without warning. They said it was for creative reasons, but he knew it wasn't. Bai Lu started noticing unfamiliar faces outside her apartment, parked cars that never seemed to move. It wasn't long before they realized that speaking about the script had consequences. They agreed to meet again, but this time secretly, away from cameras and social media. In a quiet corner of a forgotten library in Hangzhou, they made a decision to reveal everything. To bring light to what had been buried under years of silence. When the story finally broke, it wasn't through an interview or a studio leak. It came from a small anonymous post shared on an independent blog, one that analyzed C-drama conspiracies. Within hours, the post went viral. People began connecting scenes, dialogues, and moments from their dramas to real-life events. The internet exploded with theories, and for the first time, the world began to question whether fame in their world was truly earned or designed. The backlash was immediate. The studios denied everything. Other celebrities remained silent. Yet, something shifted. Fans noticed how differently Dylan spoke in his next live stream, how Shen Yue's smile seemed both relieved and fragile, how Bai Lu's eyes carried the calm of someone who finally accepted truth over fear. Then came the turning point. A final message surfaced, an unreleased video from the vanished producer himself. He spoke softly, saying that art in the modern age had lost its soul, that stars were no longer made by talent but by design. And he mentioned 3 names, Dylan, Shen Yue, and Bai Lu, calling them the mirror of a generation. When the video ended, silence covered the online world. The truth was out. The 3 of them decided never to work under the same studio again. They each walked their separate paths, but they carried one shared understanding: they had broken the circle. Months later, Dylan appeared at a quiet film festival and gave a short speech. He didn't talk about the scandal. Instead, he said, "Sometimes, the greatest roles we play are the ones we never agreed to. But once you find your script, you get to rewrite the ending." Shen Yue and Bai Lu watched from afar. The world had moved on, but something in their hearts felt finally at peace. They had faced the unseen hand that shaped them and chose to rise above it. And as the sun dipped beyond the skyline, they each looked toward the same horizon, 3 paths no longer controlled by fear, 3 souls finally free from silence. Because the truth, once spoken, never fades. So if you're here watching, don't just scroll past their story. Hit subscribe, share this video, and let their voices echo further than ever before. Because sometimes, the truth isn't just uncovered, it's reborn through those brave enough to tell it.